Hey, what's up, everybody? It's the professor again with Paradox GRP Ministries. I wanted to share a little bit of a personal story today. Thought a little bit about my grandmother kind of this past week. It's been quite some time since she passed, and I was going through some stuff in storage, and it kind of reminded me of a story for my grandmother was a major part of my upbringing. Did a lot for me. I tell people all the time that my grandmother was kind of like, when you read the book of Matthew, you think of just all of the walk of Jesus and the things that he did, the compassion. That full walk, that was my grandmother. She was an example, not to say that there weren't other people that were instrumental in my upbringing, but my grandmother was special to me. She poured so much into me, poured the word into me. She prayed over us, covered us. And a lot of who I am today with my compassionate heart and a lot of who I've become within ministry and is because of a lot of what she's instilled in me. And not that she was the only one. I had so many others that were instrumental, including my godfather and other, my mom and so many people in the church. But today was just kind of a thought. I don't speak much about my grandmother, and it's always pretty difficult when I do talk about her. So I found something that kind of reminded me of a story with her, so I wanted to share. So I remember back in middle school running track, and we were poor growing up. We didn't have a lot of money. And so during track season, I remember I ran with these Filas. I had some flat-footed Filas that I had to wear every single track meet. And I ran in them. It was all we could afford at the time, and I was flat-footed, but I made it do. And I ran the 800, the 400, the 4x400, and the 1600. That's normally what I ran during the track meets. And I remember I had a really important track meet coming up, and I had placed in position to run the 800, the 1600, and then our school had placed to run the 4x400 relay and the 4x1600 relay. And so I remember telling my grandmother about it, and my shoes, they had kind of started tearing apart by the end of the season, and they were just some non-athletic Fila shoes that I had at the moment. And I remember coming home the day before the track meet, and there was something sitting on my bed. And I looked down, and it was a pair of track shoes. Now, mind you, I was the only kid that I could tell that had been running track without official track shoes. So I had gone the entire season with regular shoes, and this was the first time I had ever had a pair of track shoes on my own. So I asked my grandmother about it, and she had mustered up everything that she could find within her finances, and she found a pair of track shoes at the thrift store. This is them. This is the track shoe. And I remember at that time I had two of the track shoe. Well, couldn't find the other one, but I remember writing my name on the track shoe. And then on the other track shoe, I wrote the name of some of the inspirations at that time, throughout sports. And on the back, it had some really, really worn spikes already. It was a thrift store, so it was the best at what they had, but it just so happened to be in my size, and this was the track shoe. And you probably can't tell from the video, but it's a pretty worn, pretty beat up, and it was like this when we got it. You could tell it was really, really well used at the time, but to me, it was almost as if it was a brand new, right off the shelf out of the store, never used before track shoe. That's how much it meant to me at that time, and I was so excited to just run in track shoes. I had never done it before, and I remember going out and running these for the first time in this very important track meet, and I set my own records. And I remember at the time there was a school record I helped to set as well. But one of the things, it was the very first time, so the coach had come to me and said, "Hey, Mike, I want you to run the anchor on the 4x400 relay." And normally I run at the start for the 4x400 relay, so I started out off the block. But this time coach said he wanted me to run the anchor. So I said, okay. And at that point, again, first time running the track shoes. So, and our team was behind in the 4x400 relay. And all I can remember is taking off in this shoe. And somehow in this shoe, we came back, and I remember just passing people, and the difference of how it felt running in this track shoe versus my Fila's I had been running in all season. It was a complete difference. And I remember we came back and we placed, I think it was around second, came back and placed second in that 4x400 relay. And then I'd gone on the rest of the track meet, and I had to run 3 other events. So I ran the 800, that event. I ran the 4x16. So for you, those of you that aren't familiar with the 4x1600, that means that 4 people run a 1600, which 1600 is 4 times around the track, which is a mile. And then I also had to run the mile as well. So I ran 4 different events during that track meet. But to me, it was interesting, because something that from someone else that was so used to me felt so brand new. And I feel like had I not gone through a season of running the entire track season with regular shoes, I wouldn't have been able to fully appreciate what it meant to even have the used shoe. I feel like if I would have started out the season with a used shoe, then I would have been comparing my used shoe to everyone else's used shoe. Well, why do they get brand new shoes and I get a used shoe? Why can't we get money for a used shoe? But because I was forced to go through with regular shoes, that by the time I got the used shoe, I was in such appreciation for that shoe, regardless of its condition, that to me, I was able to fully appreciate its value. And sometimes it's like that in life. Sometimes we can find ourselves comparing ourselves to other people and their successes in life, the things that they've accomplished, the money, the finances, and everything else. And sometimes God has to allow us to walk through a season of going without and going with the bare minimum. Sometimes we have to walk through that season, and it's only through that season that we can fully, truly appreciate what it is that God will grant and give to us. Because sometimes without doing that first, we won't fully appreciate it because we're too busy comparing it to what other people have. This was major to me. Not only did it feel great to have these, but the fact that my grandmother used her last of the money that she had saved up to purchase these for me spoke volumes. She invested in me. And this wasn't the only time, and this wasn't the only thing that she did, but and again, she wasn't the only one. There were so many instrumental people in my life, my mother, my godfather as well. But today the story is about my grandmother, so I wanted to share this story when I found this in a storage unit. I wanted to share that story because it meant a lot. It meant a lot to me, and it still does. So just know that in your season, and sometimes you have to walk through your current season. Sometimes it may not look like everyone else's story. Sometimes it may not be exactly what you want it to be, but sometimes you have to walk through that to fully be able to later on appreciate what it is that God is going to give you. Because sometimes it's not going to be the same as someone else's. Sometimes you may not value it the same as someone else's because it may seem like it's less than what someone else has. But in order to fully appreciate it, sometimes you have to walk through having a little bit less so that you can appreciate what it is that God wants to bring to you. So, love you, Nana. May your soul and spirit, may you be resting in heaven. And I look forward to joining you there one day. I felt like I just wanted to share that story again. I don't talk much about my grandmother. It's still for me an emotional subject. I miss her dearly every day. I've had dreams of just talking to her. So, but just wanted to share that and encourage somebody today. So you guys enjoy the rest of your week and you be blessed. This is the Professor with Paradox GRP. I'll catch you at the next break.